really lean into the things that work for you.
Mhm.
And what has worked for us is to start with brand archetyping. It really has been proven to lead to some powerful, strong, long-lasting brand personalities and rebrands, brand refreshes. It's proven to work. So lean into the things that work.
The lover, the magician, the hero. What do all of these have in common? Today, Jay and I are going to talk to our Insights Director, Katie Hagen. Hey, good morning, Katie. Good morning, Jay.
Morning.
Good morning.
How are you guys today?
I can't complain with the weather we're having, considering it snowed last week about 12 inches just north of us.
I know, I got 14, but it's all gone. No flooding. It's beautiful. So we're all set to go with spring.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. Well, when I first started talking about the lover, the magician, the hero, these are all brand archetypes. And Katie, can you dive in just a little bit and tell us what is, first of all, a brand archetype?
Oh my gosh, I think brand archetypes are one of my favorite things. I think they are an invaluable tool for brands to start to think about who they are and what they stand for and what that sounds like. So brand archetypes, if you Google it, it's all over the internet, right? There's so many articles about brand archetyping, and there's a lot of different tools that you can use to find out how to discover yours. But it really all goes back to the 1920s, 1930s, and a sociologist named Carl Jung. And he theorized that we all have all 12 potential subconscious ways that we decide on a product or a brand. So brand strategists and brandologists have been using brand archetyping for many, many years. And I've been using them professionally for 10 years. And they can't direct your entire brand strategy. They can't direct your entire brand platform, but they are invaluable for really kind of coming up with the intrinsic feelings, those emotions that people have, and getting everyone on the same page.
Okay.
Love it, love it. And so when you say invaluable in getting the emotions of the brand on the same page, Katie, can you, just because I have been through this process with you twice, as I was a marketing director at credit unions, right? So I'm going to add some questions that I found valuable when we first started about talking about this process and bringing it in-house. So why would I need to connect an emotion, first of all, to my brand, Katie?
That's a great question. It's a great question. And I think sometimes people think, especially left brain leaders, like think of a VP or a CEO of a bank or a credit union, they tend to think that branding is what we used to talk about it as, back in the 1900s, before the turn of the century. It was, man, we're going to be consistent. We're going to have a logo that doesn't change. We're going to have colors that do not change. We're going to have fonts that do not change. And people will understand this is a brand with staying power. And that's part of it. That is part of it. But I think if you're a marketing director and you're looking at a brand refresh and you want to better understand sort of how people come at your particular institution or organization or the products that you have. So in your case, when you were at that credit union, you needed to better understand the experience that members were having, so you could then craft this creative expression of your brand that paid that off. Because what you don't want to do as a marketing director or a brand strategist is to create a brand that doesn't match. It's like when you see somebody out there in the world who's maybe wearing a hairstyle or some clothes that just doesn't seem to quite fit, you don't buy it. It seems fake. So I think that's where your question about why should I care about emotion is so important. You don't want to seem fake. You want to seem real. And I'll get super nerdy on you guys for a second, but there is a theory out there called, the co-creation of brand messaging. And it's an academic theory, but basically what it says is everyone is co-creating your brand with you. This idea that your brand is what you think it is and what you want to tell people it is not reality anymore. People are on their phones 24/7. People are out in the world. They see your logo, they see your branch, they see your brand name, and they start to make associations immediately. And their perceptions are your reality. So what you want to do is create that emotion that speaks to them. It's about understanding the archetype that matches you, and we can talk about what those 12 archetypes are and give people more of a sense of what that is, but then also what do they give you credit for and what do they see you as already. Because you mentioned the joker and the lover at the beginning. You can come to an agency like ours and say, we just think no other credit union or bank in our space is being funny. We want to be funny. We want to be the Joker brand. Well, that's great that's what you want to be. And there's some work that you can do if you are pivoting your brand, and that takes a long time. That's a whole different podcast. But it's good to understand that just because you want to be something doesn't mean people see you that way. And if you spend money to create a whole campaign around this Joker archetype, for example, and you put it into the world and nothing happens and you sort of wonder, maybe branding doesn't work. Well, no, you didn't understand how they were co-creating with you, and you didn't understand how your message was being received, because they will then shape the brand message again once it hits their eyeballs.
Sure. I think you brought up several really good points, and the one that stuck out to me was the brand authenticity. We collectively talk about that as marketers often, right? Is trying to be as authentic as possible when it comes to social media, when it comes to your interactions with the people coming through the doors, right? And to me, it almost seems like there's two components of that, and maybe you can kind of help guide my brain process on this. There's sort of the internal alignment of teams, specifically with like our clients on the client side, that we're trying to create this authentic vision of what their brand is, and then also kind of matching that to the external influence, as you mentioned. What is the consumer's perception, and how do we take that in? So can maybe you talk a little bit about the differences between those two, and maybe how we get the internal side to align and how a brand archetype does that, and then how does that play into the external side with our consumers?
Oh, that's a great question. So internally, I think, is really where brand archetypes shine. You don't necessarily see them. They will be sub-level, subconscious in the external space, right? I think internally is where they really shine, because again, as humans, we're all sort of drawn to people that reflect our own values, right? And that's something that a brand archetype really helps articulate in a great way, because when you look at, I'm going to rattle off some of the names of them, but when you think about the people that you work with, and you think about potentially the people you need to persuade within your organization, be that your direct boss, or maybe that's a VP, maybe that's the board, to help them understand this brand vision that your team might have. So I'm going to just name this, go down here, and think about the feelings that words like this, just without even knowing some of the characteristics, what the feelings evoke in you. Here are the 12. There's the innocent. There's the every person. There's the hero that Nikki mentioned. There's the outlaw. There's the explorer. There's the creator. There's the ruler, the magician, the lover, the caregiver, the jester, and the sage. So just hearing those words, I'm betting you already had some associations of what that word means to you. So the value of brand archetypes internally is you can then take that to people who are logical, left brain. Maybe it's the CFO who's counting the money and that you're spending on the brand campaign, and they get and they can get it. You know what? They can understand and feel it. So there are people who say, gosh, brand archetyping is not scientific. It's not, something that can roadmap the entire brand. And those people, I think, are missing the point, especially internally, because internally, the number one thing you're going to need to do first is get everybody to understand what you're trying to communicate and what does this brand stand for. Nikki, I think you can talk a little bit about your experience internally after we had surfaced that brand archetype for the credit union you were working at, and how it seemed to just I shouldn't ask you a leading question, but how did the team receive that is what I want to ask.
I think first and foremost, the process that you go through, Katie, during your brand archetype is bringing in anybody from your teller line to your loan supervisors to the C-suite to board members. They all have an opportunity to talk about things with you. And that first gives them like, hey, I've been heard during this process of finding the identity. I'm the one that relates with the members or the customers every single day. I'm not removed. I know, what the language that's being spoken. But then when we can take all of that, when you did through the process and you come back and identify as a brand archetype, it was such an duh, aha, like, yes, that makes complete sense. That's who we are internally. And when you do that process, or whether you're renaming or merging, or you just want to identify a new tone of voice for your FI, you've already laid the groundwork for your tellers, the ones that are working with your members and customers, right? And so when they feel and they hear that voice and that persona, they're like, yes, this is who we are. This is going to be easy. This isn't going to be scary or a big change. This is definitely something we've been doing. It's just been this beautiful category and persona, like we said, we talked about, and I can do this. This is the way I communicate anyways, and it feels authentic, not only to me, but to my customers and my members. So for me, it really rallied the team.
I remember watching that happen, and honestly, over the last 10 years, every client that I've done it with, it seems to galvanize them internally, and everybody says, okay. So it can be a little tough to look at the creative expression, the brand work, and judge that without subjectivity or have some feedback on that. But if you always have this foundation of, hey, but we're the creator brand, this is what we do, then folks have a common pivot point to react to any of the creative work that comes next, but also the experience that they are then providing to those customers or members who are coming into the branches, or if they're answering the phones. People can hang on to literally one word. They can say, no, we're this, and this is what I do. It's such a great way to take any new brand and get people on the same page, as I have mentioned, but then also help them understand long term and not forget what all those things are. Think about the vision statements, the value statements, the messaging and positioning that marketers come up with. These are great. These are really good roadmap tools, but it's tough for everyday rank and file folks who work at the organization to remember those things. But they can remember we're creators. They can remember our brand is the Sage, and I'm here to educate people. We see that a lot with credit unions. The Sage brand comes up. We see I'm everybody's best friend. I'm the person you want to hang out and have a beer with. That's the every person brand, and that's come up for a few clients as well. Sometimes they get disappointed. What do you mean? I'm just everybody. Like, I'm not even anything special. But those brands, to me, especially in the FI space, are where you can really shine. Because FIs tend to say, oh, our people are the reason, we're so special. Come here because we're going to take care of you, and our people. We see those campaigns all the time. Right. And that's what the every person brand is. That's what the caregiver brand is. So we can help clients and brands and organizations embrace who they are. So then it helps because everyone, like I said, is working from the same sheet of music, and then you can start to distill what that means. On our side, I spent 25 years as a creative director, so I can talk about what happens when you take the idea of the archetype that everyone has agreed to, and distill that into creative expressions, campaign looks. We're going to give you some styles. That's where you start to enter that colors, fonts, consistency, tone of voice land that a lot of people associate with branding, and they forget about this first step.
Yeah,
So,
I mean that's a great summary. Is it really helps pull internal teams together because depending on the size of the organization, they can be in different locations. They can work with different folks, have different obvious aspects of that job, but this really helps create a center stage of focus of who they are and how they should perceive or how they think about communicating to their audiences for sure. Um, and I think Nikki, you've seen that come to fruition, and that's really exciting. I think so. Maybe let's take this to the next part. And what does this on the creative expression side mean, and how do we translate some of that brand archetyping into maybe the creative process?
that's the fun part. The fun part is the creative process. And at Epicosity, we like to say that it's our goal to suck all the subjectivity out of the room. When I was a creative director, if I would go to a client with especially for a new brand, because that is such a capital investment. There could be new logos, new names, new signage, new everything, right? It's a big deal. And you know who tends to overthink big deals? The CFO.
Yep.
So once you get into the creative expression, not by any, nobody's trying to mess the process up. Nobody's trying to make the work less effective, but they're all thinking about, what does this mean from my particular lens? And it could be, I can't waste this money. I need to be successful. I don't want to put something in the world that my colleagues or perhaps people that in the industry, in the region, are going to call and say, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Why did you do those things? So there's a really, I'm trying to think of the right word here, but nobody wants to mess up. So folks are at creative expression stage, they're excited. There's a lot of excitement, but there's also a lot of understated overthinking. You're going to get the micromanagement. So when I was a creative director, and if I would come with creative that was uninformed and didn't have any sort of parameters, I was going to have a bad day, especially branding, because everyone has an opinion. Yes. So what you want to do, and especially with brand archetyping, is it helps put folks within a box, and not necessarily something that's going to restrict the creative expression at all, but it gives clients, internal teams, the brand committee or the board, it gives them a way to almost have a rubric to judge the work. So you can say to them, they can help look at something that is inherently illogical. It has to be emotional, but they will judge it logically. Right. They will look at it from a logical space because they are so concerned about putting the wrong thing out in the world. It's such a big, important thing. Yeah. So the brand archetype, from that case, when we start distilling it, it's really helpful for clients to be able to judge the work. But you were kind of asking, Jay, about just creating the work. And I think from there, creatives, the creative directors, the writers, the art directors, the graphic designers, they love things like this because there's nothing worse than being a creative professional and having somebody say, well, they want something wow, go. That's a really tough place to be in. And someone who hasn't done that for a living, it can tend to look easy. It could tend to be, well, I could do that. Like I could put the pictures and the colors and the words together like that. But there's a whole universe of pictures and colors and words to be putting together and concepts. And so they're going to be looking at the competitive in the space because, of course, we would never want to rebrand or use our archetype creative expression to put somebody in the position of looking like a competitor, right? If you've got a
Right.
competitor who's doing it really, really well, they're using a ton of a specific style, or their tone is a specific way, or their colors are really recognizable, we're going to want to take that into consideration. And that's why I said at the beginning that the brand archetype isn't everything, but it needs to be part of the thing.
Yeah.
The creative is going to then distill the feelings. They're going to say, oh, okay, so, I've got a brand here that's the ruler. That means I need to feel powerful. I need to feel like, kind of above the rest type of a feeling. A ruler brand, maybe like Rolex or something. So they're going to start to look at the attributes that go with the archetype. We talked about the Joker before. That's a fun one, but there's a lot of different tones of Joker, right?
Right.
Maybe you're a Sage brand and you think, okay, I need to make sure that I'm informing people, I'm educational. People are going to learn from everything we put out into the world. Or I love the Magician brand. It's all about magic and unexpected things. So where could that lead you as a creative professional? You're not going to see when the creative comes back, well, here's, gesture A and here's gesture B, but it's going to be the attributes will be infused into the work.
Yeah. It sounds like it really gives focus to the message, to the ideas and the concepts. And I think, I was in a meeting the other day where I literally heard this, the CEA gets a wild hair and then he wants to do this crazy idea. Maybe, Nikki, you can talk about how a brand archetype sort of helps field some of the wild hairs out there, some of those crazy ideas that may not necessarily align with what your brand does, right?
Well, exactly. There is, I think everybody wants to be different. They want to distinguish themselves. And I wholeheartedly know, and I think a lot of our FI marketing friends are on this path already. They know that they're blending in and everybody's kind of looking the same out there and they're trying to identify how they can stand out. And of course, they're doing some different things, but it's not been informed. It's not informed by their membership, their leadership, their staff internally either. So, it can turn out to be a wild hair. With the best intentions, there can be some wild hairs. I know that when I just went to a different credit union, we were undergoing a merger, and I had been through this brand archetype, and I was like, oh, I got this. I can do this. Really couldn't. I was pretty far off, you guys. I gave it my old college try, but I was pretty far off. But I think what really happens is you have a lot of different personalities and a lot of tones and a lot of, like Katie said, left and right brain thinkers within an FI. But the thing that everybody has in common is the want to be successful and help the customers and the members. Like that is where everybody can come in and agree. And this is just the best logical step, informed by science as much as we can, right, with this process. And then truly, I'm going to say it's magical what happens after you listen to everybody, after those great creative directions come back. When you launch this new name, new brand, new colors, new branding, and you've got that core of who you are, and you're all on the same page internally, literally new members, new customers come because they're like, yeah, that is who I am. That's who I want to align with. This is how I want to invest, save, or spend my money with this person who believes the same thing I do. They have the same values. And I guess I really want to talk to Katie and Jay, both you guys, on why that's important on being different. Because I feel like so many people I talk to are like, I'm afraid of being too different. ABC Bank is doing it this way. They're really growing. If I do it this way, I'm afraid I'll be different. What if I alienate people? So like, what does Katie and Jay, in your opinion, this brand archetype, how does that attract really the right kind of people to join your organization?
Gosh, I would say it's a lot like going out and just making friends.
Yeah.
It's you gravitate to the people who get you and who like you, and it's better when you're being authentic. And we can all think of times where we maybe tried to be someone else and that doesn't work so well. That doesn't feel comfortable. I like how you said, Nikki, that it needs to be informed, because one thing we haven't talked that much about, not to derail this track that you put us on, but is
Derail
that
trade, Katie.
external research. We're doing a lot internally, but we're also going out and asking the customers, the credit union members, what do they think? How do they see you? 'Cause I think that's branding in a nutshell, right? Like, you have to know who you are. You have to know. It can't be who one person thinks you are. You might have a big personality. You might have somebody who feels really strongly and everyone's like, oh, okay, but you have to know who you are. And then you have to know who they are. You have to know who your customers are.
Yes.
And then it's really important, to your other point, Nikki, to not try to be everything for everybody. From that place of people who are spending a lot of money and not wanting to screw up and wanting to make sure it works. We don't want to waste our money. There's nobody who's bad with money in banking. Well, I mean, maybe SVB or something. But they want this assurance. They want this sense that it's going to work. And that's where you start to see brands that are a little bit, I don't want to do anything too crazy. I don't want to stand out because if I do that, maybe I'm going to turn people off. Maybe it won't work. And so they're going to try to be everything to everybody. And if you correlate that to how you live your own life, that doesn't work.
Right.
If you try to be everything to everybody, you put yourself in a very stressful place, and you probably don't feel like you're getting really meaningful connections. It's the same with your brand.
Yeah.
It's the same with your brand. Have courage to stand for something. That's still tough in the FI space because it's still such a commodity industry. It really, really is. And so we joke about banks and credit unions saying it's our people, but really in a lot of cases the service level is the thing that can differentiate them and does differentiate them. So how do you put that into your brand? You have to start thinking about, again, what people want, what they're looking for, what they're not getting with the competition, and then take that back to your archetype and say, okay, if this is who we are and this is not changing, how can we then connect with people in a real, authentic way that sounds like an organization they want to be a part of? Right. And do that using a tone of voice and a style, a design style that stands out from the competition. That's tough. It's easy to look like everybody else, and it's faster, and it's probably cheaper. You can see why people really
for now
gravitate.
cheaper for now, right? Because I mean, honestly, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, Katie, because I know you have nuggets that come out, and so I never want to slow you down, but I think that was a big thing, just that phrase you said, cheaper for now, because what happens in the long run when you don't invest and differentiate yourself, and especially with all the new fintechs that are coming and just the new economy of money, right? And it's changing on the daily. It's just, this industry is under attack a little bit, just because you mentioned SVB and stuff like that too. So I think this is a really important pivotal moment for people to really think about who their brand is and what that looks like going down the road. Whether it's 6 months, a year to 5 years, what does that pathway look for you? And how do you want to attract and retain and keep your customers and members going forward?
Yeah, it definitely is the every bank idea, that concept where you're flexible enough where you attract everybody, and that's really short-term benefits at the cost of long-term commitments from your customers, from your clients. And I think that's where the brand archetyping really helps. A terrible way to look at it is like everybody has to wear jeans, but maybe the outlaw brand wears, a wallet chain with their jeans, right? It's just, what is that unique thing that can appeal a little bit heavier to an audience, that reflects who you are and allows you to be more consistent in your expression of your brand and your approach to the market. with those specific segments. So we've talked quite a bit about the brand archetypes in general, but maybe, Katie, can you hone in on one or two specific ones just so that the audience, so to speak, our listeners have a better understanding of kind of what is the core fundamental of a brand archetype, personality, or whatever you'd want to call it.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. There's some that are a lot more, I mean, aspirational is the wrong word, but if you look at the wheel, the 12 archetypes that are out there, there's some that everybody seem to want to be.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I'm in the process of surfacing it with clients, there's a lot of times they're like, yeah, we're the creator brand. And the creator brand is, if you go Google it, you'll get Apple Steve Jobs type of things. You'll get Disney. You'll get some brands that folks are just like, yeah, I want to be that. The creator brands are all about doing something new, doing something fresh, coming out there and changing the paradigm, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily something you think about in the FI space, but then Nikki was just coming up with fintechs. I think you're starting to see fintechs really embrace the creator brand archetype. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean and who does that appeal to? Depending on the design, probably younger folks. Right? Mm-hmm. So if you're a credit union, you're thinking, why is our membership getting older and we're not attracting younger? Not that you need to be a creator brand if you aren't one, but taking a look at creator brands, I think, can be a real inspiring place to be and think, okay, yeah, that's interesting. And if you start to look at your competition through that lens, look at the top 5 or 6 banks or credit unions in your area that you feel like are always, you just like they do something cool and you're like, oh, they did something cool. Are they a creator brand? I think they're great. Another brand that was, we worked with a credit union out in the Black Hills of South Dakota. There is another one of my favorites, the Hero, the brand that is just the fireman running into the fire to save everybody. Like they're going to be there to just amplify, take care of people, really support the community. Those are the types of things where you tell the president of that credit union that after your research, you think he's the hero brand, and they just stand up a little bit taller. Yeah. The hero brand makes people feel a certain type of way, right? When their staff learned we're the hero brand, it instills pride. Mm-hmm. So the hero brand is one of my favorites when that comes up. And there's some certain attributes that have to, we do a lot of different methodology research to help come up with this. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to tell you this because I want to make you happy today. You really need to be that. So I love the hero brand a lot. The outlaw brand gets a lot of conversations. They're the Harley Davidson types, just out there breaking rules and those types of things. And you wouldn't necessarily think of an outlaw brand in the FI space. But that being said, I think they're probably out there. Way, way, way back when Ally Bank came out as a brand. They gave me kind of outlaw vibes. And that was years ago, and it wasn't necessarily the fintech app situation like there is now. But the very first big bank to come out and say, we're your friend, you're your ally. So you would say, oh gosh, Katie, they're probably more the every person, or maybe they're the caregiver. But I felt like when that brand came out, that was an outlaw vibe. That was a come over here and do it different. I don't know how about doing now, but
I totally want to see chains at a FI now, Jay, that you've said that. Like I can't get my mind off of the fact that you can just have it like emblazed in there. We're with you all the way, always connected to your money. Now my mind is just going, Jay.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like you mentioned the caregiver brand, when you think of healthcare, you're like, well, everybody's a caregiver, right? But not necessarily, because there are healthcare institutions that are really focused on innovation and, surgical precision, and that doesn't make them a caregiver brand. So that's why I think it's like, this process is so important to help distinguish, what you may perceive your brand to be versus what it actually is, how collectively your organization views itself and how your audiences view itself, and the research we do to come up with that and then connect those two things together to make those very distinctive. And you can also have different variations of the same brand. A sage brand isn't a sage brand. There can be multiple variations of sort of the saginess, for lack of a better term, of that brand type, right?
Yeah, you're talking about your brand voice wouldn't change. You would always be the sage, but the tone can change. You can add a little bit of jester to your tone. The way that you express your archetype is not so solid that you would never be able to branch out from that. There should always be tone of voice changes. And if you really want an Inception level story, Nikki's credit union was the caregiver archetype, the one that we did, but we named them explorers, and explorer is an archetype in and of itself, but they were not the explorer archetype. They were the caregiver. Everyone, I think I talked to everybody at that credit union.
You did.
Everyone. Yeah. It was just, we take care of the members, we take care of the members, we take care of the members, wall to wall. So I came back and I said, you are the caregiver brand. And everybody was like, great, but we also want to be cool. We also want to be cool. So and that's a great example, I think, of the creative expression spinning to be what needed to happen in that particular market for that particular client while still staying true to their archetype. If you look at any Explorers brand expression that we did, it's caregiver through and through.
Mm-hmm.
It is. But in a cool...
we're taking care of people by helping them discover. I think the tagline was "Discover the difference," Nikki. Like discover where you can go, and all of that had a very intrinsic people first mentality. That was another creative expression that we did. It was, I think we said the phrase "people first" like 8 times in the spot. People first. People first, people first, people first. It was always about that taking care of others through the lens of the Explorer brand.
Mm-hmm. Which is Inception. And I'll even tie that into earlier you had said in the podcast, Katie, that your brand identity isn't one person, right? Or anything like that. And going through this process, it is for me really good because I was the marketing leader at the time when we went through that process at Explorers and the one in the Black Hills. And it's really cool that even though I'm still not there, you can see this brand still grow, still develop, and be true to its archetype, which is understanding by the board of directors, the leadership, and it's fun to see everybody tie it back. Any decision they made, does it fit within our archetype? And so just like that box that you drew of those core personalities. So I think it's awesome that they're still discovering the difference and living true to their archetype.
Yeah. And I think, it's cool that this is a thing that exists. Like you said, Katie, multiple times. You can just go out there and Google this stuff, right? It's not like a hidden secret. This isn't some sort of formulaic thing that a marketing agency just made up one day. This is really tried and proven within industries. It's research based. There's a lot of legs to this. So I think, for our listeners, they can go online and look at the information, make guesses at who they think they are. I think that would be kind of fun just to see, based on what your perception is, where do you think your organization is, or maybe even the personalities within it, which is a very cool thing that, people could certainly do. So,
absolutely. And I would say too that there's really no brand strategy tool that out there that hasn't copped a bit of a beating. Folks, some can tend to think that it's a little soft and unnecessary. But I would encourage anybody who's watching this podcast to really lean into the things that work for you. Mm-hmm. And what has worked for us is to start with brand archetyping. It really has been proven to lead to some powerful, strong, long-lasting brand personalities and rebrands, brand refreshes, all the things, right? But from internal with your team to external and understanding your audience and how they're going to co-create that brand with you, it's proven. It's proven to work. So lean into the things that work.
Yeah, for sure.
Brand
That was a great wrap up.
It truly was. And I'm going to just say thank you for your time, Sage, Full Wise, Katie, and my outlaw, Jay. All right, what's mine? Gotta ask.
You wear multiple hats, Nikki. You rock.